My name is Maria Noel Leoni, and I'm the director of GQual. GQual is a global campaign to achieve gender parity in international representation. Since launching the campaign, we have raised awareness, proposed solutions to overcome the underrepresentation of women in international decision-making spaces. We at GQual have always placed a particular focus on the spaces related to justice and human rights, tracking the data and proposing solutions to overcome the underrepresentation of women. But these spaces are not the only ones settling cases in the international sphere, promoting rights and international agreements, and contributing to key global challenges where women's equal participation is essential. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Ms. Anoush der Boghossian, founder and chair of the World Trade Organization Gender Research Hub and head of the WTO Trade and Gender Unit. Welcome, Anoush, and thanks so much for making the time to chat with us. So I'll go straight to some questions. So why is women's equal representation, participation, and perhaps gender parity in particular relevant to the work of the WTO?
Right. Well, I think it's a very interesting question because we never think about the links between trade and gender from that perspective. We always think about that from an economic perspective, from an economic efficiency perspective. And actually, if you have women leaders in trade, which means not just having a leadership position in a high, in an institution or at the government, but also at all levels of trade, if I may say so, you will find that actually the economy and the trade growth is much more dynamic. So this is all about, I would say, also leveling the trade playing field in favor of women.
That's fantastic. Do you think is there, like in your experience, a link between women's participation and gender inclusive trade policies and the promotion of women's rights?
Absolutely. I mean, you can see it if you look at the national trade policies that have been adopted by governments, or also the free trade agreements that they've been negotiating. You have measures and provisions that are focusing on gender equality, and not just about access to economic opportunities, but also equal access to education, healthcare. Also looking at issues related to integrating the different global value chains as female entrepreneurs, for example. There's a lot of measures that are focusing on that as well, and also focusing on female farmers, and female farmers being also the guardian of food security. So there you also have the link with all the different human rights issues that we are all dealing with currently and for the future. So definitely these what I call these social issues, these more social issues, are definitely included in those different trade policies, because the economy or the economic empowerment and the social empowerment are two sides of the same coin. Especially when you look at when you talk about, or you're looking at gender equality, you can have the best measure supporting female entrepreneurs to have access to markets, but if you don't give them access to finance, for example, if you don't give them access to property, then they can never be flourishing in international trade, because they would not be able to cover the cost of trade. It's almost as simple as that. So it needs to be, these issues needs to be sort of embedded in these policies together, so that they really work for women.
That's super important. And well, our campaign is to change the picture. So what does the picture of the WTO when it comes to gender look like? We know that you have been working and doing a lot of work on collecting data, systematizing data. What does the data say?
The data is not great, I'm really sorry to say. In terms of the representation of governments in the WTO, I'll just give you two figures. So it's not, we're far from, the 50-50, the parity figures. And I think I really don't know exactly the reasons behind these figures, except maybe we need to look at the foreign services in the countries and how they have these programs to enhance women's participation in this sector and to give them opportunities to access this kind of jobs. So this is something which is a key issue for us internally in the Secretariat as well. We see quite, I would say maybe on average, it's about 20% of women that are working here that are either in high-level positions or middle management positions, and this is not great, to be honest. But we're working at it. We have made some progress, to be honest. We are almost at parity in terms of the number of female directors in the organization, which is a good sign. And then now we also have a gender policy, an internal gender policy, to support the appointment of more women at these managerial or leadership positions in the organization. That will support that actually. So we are getting there, but we are still at the very beginning of that process.
Yeah, and for us, it's been an experience that like collecting the data and showing the data, analyzing the data, and also understanding what the data does not show is super important in terms of changing that picture. How do you see that change happening and the efforts of continue working with the data?
No, absolutely. I mean, in 2022, we conducted an audit in the organization. And it helped us really draft the new gender policy. So, of course, the data helps informing all the policies that we're making. That's an internal policy that's more HR related, but it goes the same for trade and gender, for example, or for governments. Most of them, they don't have the data. They don't know where women are in trade, for example, if they work in the export sector, or if women entrepreneurs are exporting, and what are they exporting, which sectors, is it more services, more goods, and they don't have that kind of data, and compared to where men are also in trade, right? Because it's not just to say, oh, we know that we have 12% of women entrepreneurs in our country. No, it's to say how many men are entrepreneurs. If it's the same figure, then you don't have an issue in terms of parity. You have an issue in terms of entrepreneurship, for sure, but not in terms of parity. Now, if you say that 12% of women are entrepreneurs and 40% are men, then you can see the difference, and then you can start thinking about the why. Because it's not just about the data; it's also how you're going to use it, and how you're going to analyze it, and what for exactly. Is it to integrate in your strategic plan, development plan, to have just a general objective, or is it really to go into specific, dedicated, targeted measures to really, let's say, find a solution to a situation which is not, which is discriminatory against women? And so data is absolutely key. But I would say also another thing which is very important in terms of collecting this information, it's not just about the figures. It's also understanding where you stand in terms of the policy framework and the legal framework that you have in place in the country. It's the same thing here in the WTO. That's what we did. We also assessed all the different policies that we had that could directly or indirectly impact gender equality in the organization. And I think for government it's the same thing. Do you have laws that are prohibiting women to have access to property, for example, going back to the example I was giving earlier? Or do you have policies that already integrate even just a general gender equality objective? Even that, you need to know what's in your constitution. Some countries have gender equality in their constitutions that can serve as a legal basis. So if you look at that as well, I think it's quite important to have that evidence, that more like legal evidence, coupled with the more statistical evidence, it gives you a big picture to start really looking at these issues and see, okay, where do we want to focus our policy work?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and so like on terms of finding those solutions or ways forward, and looking particularly perhaps like at the WTO or even the WTO panels, and what are some of the challenges that you identify, or some of the things or the measures that have been implemented that you've seen being successful in achieving progress?
Right. So I was just in Jordan a couple of days ago, and the government has organized a trade policy conference because they are starting to look at how they can integrate gender equality in their trade policies. And actually, it was quite interesting because they've went through the diagnostic. They went through the audit, let's say, of the country itself, and they had different partners in doing that. And I think it was quite interesting to see where they are now. They have a set of recommendations that they think, we can carry them forward. But then it's just a matter of understanding. So, okay, you have the recommendations that would probably transform into specific measures in your trade policies. But then what about implementing those measures? It's another ball game. It's in a sense, it's easy to draft a policy, but implementing it and understanding, and this is also, again, where data collection is very important, is monitoring the implementation of whatever you're doing. Because it's just, you can have the best lawyers draft the best policy, but then if you don't... Accountability. If you don't implement it, if you don't monitor how you implement it. And the implementation process is very important because you cannot just, you as a government or an institution, by yourself be able to implement this. You need all sorts of different partners, stakeholders, private sector, public sector, women entrepreneurs associations, for example, even women workers associations if they exist in some countries, which I know they do. So you need to also kind of have this this map of who are your implementation partners, so that you can really have an impact on the ground, because that's what you're looking for, right? So I think looking at that, it's the main challenge is making the leap between just having the policy, adopting it, and then transforming it into concrete actions and initiatives and programs. And the monitoring aspect also is quite challenging.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been listening to your answers, and I'm thinking like how connected, like the challenges, the methods of work, and the opportunities are with what we are doing at Equal, and so we've been collaborating on some discussions recently about the importance of achieving women's equal participation in international decision-making spaces. So where do you see opportunities to strengthen that collaboration, and not only with us, but with others who are looking at this issue of women's in international spaces and equal participation, and what are the opportunities you see in that field?
No, I think this type of collaboration is absolutely essential. You cannot do it alone, for sure. And it's interesting to have different organizations from different perspectives, different sectors. And for me, it's very enriching, and it also opens up the way you do your work. If I was just focusing, if I was just working with, I don't know, UNCTAD and ITC, then you remain in your trade bubble, basically, and you don't understand the connections between trade and these other more, I would say, human rights related issues. And when you deal with, or when you work on gender equality, you cannot ignore all the other connections.
Exactly.
It's the cross-cutting.
And how much we can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Because the strategies are, so similar, and things that are lesson learned, good practices, and collective effort.
Exactly. And this is where I think we need to communicate more. For me, the first thing is to exchange about who is doing what, you know, in what field, in what sector, with which different partners, because we all also have our different stakeholders, right? So it could be really interesting to have this sort of platform where we could exchange already that, and then once you know what we do, we can establish the connection and say, okay, well, you know, similar in the same way we did that together. I think we can say, okay, well, maybe we can collaborate on this type of projects or this type of programs, because there are all these links that we have, we can create. And this is something for me key, you know, the communication aspect and the transparency aspect and the sharing aspect is the first step towards really making sure that everything that we do has a real impact.
Absolutely, and I will take your word on that so that we can continue to collaborate and include more voices in the conversation.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for the information and for working together and collaborating with us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.